On this special episode of Homeworthy, we're exploring some of the elegant and historic homes of New Orleans' top interior designers. First, we visit designer Chad Graci in the heart of Mid-City for a tour of his exquisite jewel box home, filled with curated treasures and timeless charm. Next, we stop by the stunning home of interior designer Rivers Spencer, where traditional Southern elegance is seamlessly blended with fresh contemporary touches. Finally, we visit the breathtaking home of renowned antique expert, author, and designer Tara Shaw, whose space artfully merges old-world heirlooms with contemporary elements to create a home that feels both storied and inspired. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. If you're looking to make your own space more homeworthy, we've teamed up with Cherish, our go-to online destination for chic, one-of-a-kind finds, sourced from the world's most wonderful vendors.
Mercury drops are from an artist I found on Cherish.
Whether we're after a bold statement piece or the perfect finishing touch, Cherish has extraordinary items that leave a lasting impression.
This table I bought on Cherish from Berlin, and it has a little bit of it's a tray, and it is mid-century, and it's one of my favorite pieces.
It's where we find iconic looks to set homes apart.
I think many dealers would agree that Cherish is the absolute best.
So to support Homeworthy and discover amazing items from Cherish, scan the QR code or click on the link below to start shopping.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Chad. Welcome to my New Orleans home. Come on in, let me show you around. Hi, I'm Chad Graci, principal of Graci Interiors. Welcome to my New Orleans home. We're in the Mid-City neighborhood, and this is my study. My home is a 1916 double shotgun house that is now a single shotgun house, thanks to me. I'd say that the style of the architecture is a little unique for New Orleans. It is a mashup of sort of late Victorian and craftsman styles. So I liked the facade of it because it wasn't so kind of rick-racky Victorian. It had a little bit of a streamlined feeling on the front, which really drew me to the house. So right now we are in my formal living room, which also doubles as an entry hall, just because this type of house in New Orleans really didn't have a formal foyer or entry hall. So these rooms really do double duty. This is where, if I'm having people over for dinner or drinks, we usually start up here in the front part of the house, and then we migrate back to the dining room, which you'll see in a little bit. But typically, day to day, come in the door, this is where I put bags, shoes, phone, wallet, keys. I normally have some flowers up here. It's just a good way to sort of start the day, really, to have this surface with everything I need to go. These windows are only on the facade of the house. When the house was renovated, they changed the windows on the two sides of the house to those the energy efficient type. And that's why I have these green these black Japanese shades to hide the not great looking windows that came with the house. But at least we have these beautiful transoms here in the front room and in the study as well. So a shotgun house in New Orleans is a house style that is still popular and has been popular. Basically what it means is if you open up the front door, you can shoot a shotgun from the front door and it'll go out the back of the house. All the rooms are sort of enfiladed, one after another. So the house style has been popular just because of the way that the lots and plots of New Orleans were developed. And there are single shotguns, there are side hall shotguns, there are double shotguns, which means there were 2 residences that shared a single wall in the middle. So what I've done here is I've taken a double shotgun and punctuated that center wall, and you'll see when we walk through, to make it a single family home. Let's check out the living room. In this front part of the house, I really wanted to keep the palette quiet and spare because some of the larger art pieces are here and they really needed some breathing room around them. I wanted to ground the space with this beautiful green velvet sofa, and then everything else is just sort of a neutral that plays off of that. I love these chairs because they serve 2 purposes. They sort of separate this entry and sort of create like a little mini foyer for me, but they have sentimental value as well. These are from my father's office back in the 80s. He was a practicing architect at one point in time. So these have been with me in my college condo, college apartment. They've been to New York with me and back here. They've had lots of different outfits, but right now they're in a neutral linen silk blend. And this is a great African textile that I dressed up with a little metallic cord from Samuel & Sons. I love the way this brings a subtle pattern and a little bit more color to the room. Every room, usually in my house, and mostly the ones I design for other people, have a little bit of animal print somewhere. So here I've chosen the classic Scalamandre silk velvet tiger. This literally goes with everything. It's been moved around this house a lot. I love this painting because it reminds me of a trapper keeper that I had in 5th grade, but this is actually a wonderful artist based in New Orleans called Richard Johnson. I have a couple of his pieces. I really love the movement, the layering, and the exuberance of it. And I really love the way that it sort of floats above this heavier green sofa. This is a chair here that I love. It's actually the most comfortable chair in this room. This I found at a thrift store back in the 9th Ward and threw it in the back of my car. It now has a J. Robert Scott texture on it, and I really think that the low profile of it helps kind of bring you through the space. I wanted to keep things low in here just because, I mean, this is the living room, but you do have to just pass through this room to get to the back of the house. So I didn't really want too many visual barriers in here in the way. This is the only tile that's original to the house. Actually, I loved the colors, and they really did inspire some of the color choices in this room. As you can see, the greens, the browns, the blacks, they really translate through the fabric choices in here. This mantle was here. This mirror is from an estate sale on St. Charles Avenue that I definitely had to fight a couple of people for, but I always win at those things. Anyway, I love the way that this reflects the window opposite it. It's not really a functional fireplace. It was a coal burning fireplace at some point in time, but usually they've been bricked up by this point. So instead of creating a seating group around a non-functional fireplace, I really just wanted to have it feel like a sculptural piece. It's sort of like a defining point in the room. It really does separate this smaller, more intimate seating group from the main seating group. And again, the mirror reflects the window light beautifully and brings a little sparkle back here. I'm definitely not great with plants, so you know, a preserved boxwood topiary is always a good choice to bring some everlasting green into the space. This wonderful table actually is worth mentioning. This is from my grandmother's house, and I've wanted it since I was able to actually know what a table was. So finally, it made its way here to this house. I liked it because it was sort of the most exotic thing I had ever seen as a 5-year-old. And it's got elephants and ivory tusks on the bottom. I mean, I know you can't really do that anymore. It's an antique. But I just loved the elephant ears. I was obsessed with it for my whole life. And now here it is. It's probably my favorite thing in this room. It's got a lot of sentimental value. I do like mixing in African pieces with more high style things. I just love the artistry of the pieces, and the patina of the wood is always just so beautiful and incredible. And they're functional. You know, someone actually could probably sit here if every chair was taken up and have a drink or a piece of cheese or something from a cheese platter. But no, we do use all of this stuff. Let's talk about this piece though, because this is a great piece. This is also a thrift store find that was, I think, probably $20, but you know, I had it reframed for about 20 times more than that. But anyway, I love the way this piece catches the light, especially from the front door, because it's got a glass panel on it. So it's a great thing to see. It's not a jarring thing, but I just love the way it creates shadows. And then I did add these beautiful Art Deco sconces to this wall. It's one of the first things I did buy for the house. I've been on my own for about 15 years now. I lived in New York prior to moving back to New Orleans, where I grew up. I worked for David Easton in New York for several years, and that was really an incredible, inspiring, informative experience. And I think about those times in my decorating career daily. So I'm back in New Orleans since 2009. I lived in a much smaller condo right after I got back from New York, and after 7 years of living in 650 square feet, I really was it was sort of busting at the seams. I mean, it was art from the baseboards to the crown and every wall. I'm surprised I didn't start putting things on the ceiling. So I knew it was time to find a home where I could finally unpack everything that had been in storage, that I had collected, that I've gotten from my family, my mother, my grandparents. You know, it was time to not have to pull out seasonal bins of clothing from under beds and up high in closets. It was just time to sort of, you know, have some space and breathe and really just sort of decorate a place. I mean, I loved my other condo. It was gorgeous, and we had the best parties there. I mean, it was somehow the tiniest places are the best party places. But this house has just given me sort of room to breathe. It's now become a design laboratory. Everything's moving, everything's changing all the time. It's a place where, you know, I can wake up one morning and say, gosh, you know what? Why didn't I paint the bathroom yellow? And it's a place where I can try that out and then really retract that because it's terrible, you know? So anyway, I'm really enjoying myself here. Okay guys, follow me into the study this way. There's a lot to see in here. Everyone loves this room that comes over here. It's one of my favorite rooms. This is where I spend a lot of time in the morning doing emails and phone calls before heading to the office. This room was actually a third bedroom in the house, and this large cased opening was not here. It had a tiny door with some tiny ugly closets in here and an ugly fan. I knew I needed another public sitting room basically for more chairs. So anyway, I created this big cypress opening to match the others you'll see later on in the house tour. So there are 3 large cypress openings in the house, and what they do is they really separate the house functionally, and they sort of bring you through. So one's here, there's one that goes to a guest suite basically, and then the third one separates the dining room to the more casual parts of the house, the kitchen, family room, which we'll explore a little bit later on. But this room I love because the only thing I told my finished carpenter was that I don't care how big these bookcases end up, they have to fit this pull-out sofa, which is a sofa bed for when my niece and nephew come, and these plaster shell inserts that I literally dragged off of a job site 20 years ago and put in the trunk of my car, and they have been in storage and followed me around forever. So finally they have a permanent home here. So those were the things I started with this room, and then everything else kind of grew organically. I've been trying to figure out what this is for a very long time. This was something that my sister and I fought over at an estate sale. So it ended up in her place for a long time. And then I think her children got scared of it, if you actually look at the people. So here it is now. It's an old Chinese piece. It's silk, it's hand painted. I believe it is some sort of Chinese allegory. If anybody knows anything about it after watching this, please let me know. I'd love to know. But it's incredibly beautiful. I've always loved the colors in this piece. I love the scale of it. And I knew immediately this is where it needed to go. I mean, really, this is the best spot for it. The wall color is unique. It's Farrow and Ball churlish green. And it's sort of a funny color. It changes throughout the day, but I never tire of it and I love it. And it really does play off some of the greens and browns in the living room because these two rooms are really visually connected. Another fabulous find from Grandma's house is this mid-century black and gold embossed armchair. This is another thing that I coveted for a long time. But this actually did come with me to New York, and this was in my other condo as well. So it'll come with me everywhere. I love it. I never sit in it, but it's sentimental value. Other good things about this room. Here's lots of animal moments here. Rug, pillow, another pillow. This chandelier is a 1920s pewter chandelier. This really makes this room, well, one of the things that make this room. I love the chandelier. This chandelier will come with me wherever I go. I found that here in New Orleans at a local antique shop, Mac Maison. Knew I had to have it. And I tried to corral a lot of landscapes in this room just because they just felt natural in here. So this is a great piece from auction. I just love the abstracted trees. And then these two mid-century pieces are James La Mancha. He's a mid-century artist, and he was a professor of architecture at Tulane for a number of years. So I have a couple of his. Whenever I see them come up for auction, I try to grab them. I have 3 now. These are just actually Roman landscapes, which I love. I have an affinity for Rome because I studied architecture there for a year in school. This was one of the pieces that I was talking about that sort of came to me, this black lacquer desk. I knew I always wanted one, and it came up for auction pretty much immediately after I thought, okay, now it's time to find the black lacquer desk, and here it is now. I always like a little bit of black as well with my animal prints. This is sort of a new addition to this room. I needed something comfortable to sit in. This is in Timothy Corrigan's Schumacher line. I think it's Schumacher. Anjou stripe. I remembered it, but it's fabulous. I just love the scale, love the pattern. The pull-out sofa actually is a cast-off from a client. And I had some old curtains from another condo, and here they are. So it's very Sound of Music. You know, curtains to, not outfits, but upholstery. Okay, there is a TV in this room. Let me show you. It's, of course, one of the frame TVs that's supposed to look like a painting, but we all know that it's a television. But I guess it's better than having a big old thing on an arm in a big black square, or rectangle. The interiors are much different now. The exterior is just a better version of what it was. The exterior, the colors were great. The colors had been selected by a New Orleans color artist, Louis Aubert. So I knew that they were good. So someone did take the time to do a decent renovation on the house prior to me moving in. And that's one of the main reasons why I like the house, because you know, it had already been started. So it enabled me to go much further with what I wanted the house to be afterwards. So all the new systems were in place. It wasn't like I had to redo plumbing, AC, electrical. It just was sort of rearranging everything. So that was one of the main things that I liked about the house. I also liked the layout, the rough layout of the house. It didn't you didn't walk in the front door and see the kitchen, which so many of these renovations now, these fast renovations, it's just, you know, hello, you open the door, it's a white box and a kitchen. So I was really happy with the initial flow of the house, and then it let me kind of finesse the rooms a little bit more. I'd love to show you my dining room now, but on the way there, there's a treat that I think you might like. It's a little jewel box powder room that everyone seems to gravitate towards. Come this way. So step in here. So again, kind of going with our green, browns, blacks. This really is the ultimate green. I chose to lacquer this because it's a dark room. I just need a little sparkle in here. This is my formal powder room. And instead of doing a wallpaper, I have this mini collection of all these little bitty landscapes that I've just picked up over the years at auction or estate sales or galleries. So I thought, what better way to showcase them all than to just stack them really from the top of the wainscot to the ceiling in lieu of a wallpaper. So there's still more room, believe it or not, for more paintings, but you get the gist of it. I love addressing a powder room because it is so essential. This is the room that everybody sees. It's the most public, obviously, bathroom. So don't skimp on design in a room like this. This is the room to be maximal, to max out your fantasy bathroom. I really chose to do that with color and lacquer. There's a beautiful pewter leaf ceiling in here. Aside from the art in here, my favorite piece in the powder room is this gilded oyster shell chandelier with hand-painted oyster shells. It really is a sculptural moment with a nod to the South. This is actually a found piece from a salvage yard. It's a wall-mounted Art Deco vanity. It didn't have a top or anything. I went to a remnant sale at a marble yard. In case you ever need a fabulous marble for cheap, wait till your local stone yard has a remnant sale. Anyway, this gorgeous marble fits on here, and I dressed it up with a vintage P.E. Guerin faucet that was broken from a former client, but I just took it to the local repair shop and they dressed it up for me, so it works just fine. I do have a favorite piece of art in here. It's actually this piece that I love walking by this room every single day and looking in here. It's just a beautiful Sicilian landscape. I'm Sicilian, and so I was definitely drawn to this, and it had a beautiful frame. This is something I scooped up at auction. I think doing the high gloss lacquer in a small room really gives a big impact. I think it expands the room visually somehow because of the mirroring sparkle effect of it. It doesn't make you feel so confined. And on top of that, why not just do a dark color too? I mean, people are afraid of dark colors in small spaces, but I think that a dark color on everything in a small room really makes the room feel larger. It blurs sort of the architectural details of the space. It blurs the edges and corners. And I think that really helps along with the lacquer. My design style for myself, I like to say, is elevated estate sale finds, really. And I go with what I see and what I feel and what comes to me. I'm really patient. I have visions of things that I know that I want in my home and in my life, and they come. You'll find them. I'll find it at an auction or an estate sale, and it's my job to turn it into what you see here, sort of a collected experience, really. Now to the dining room. Excuse the mess. I'm setting up for a little small dinner I'm having here tonight, but I can show you some great linens and china while we're in here. You might notice that the dining room wall color is the same as the living room. I needed a unifying element, so I just chose this creamy bone white from Benjamin Moore. I thought it was the perfect backdrop for the two rooms to tie together. And as you saw in the living room, color comes from the upholstery and the fabrics. I wanted the dining room to be a little more severe and but still welcoming. So I do love Biedermeier, so you'll see Biedermeier pieces kind of sprinkled throughout my house. Here we go. Here's our cheetah in this room. I usually like to, this will be a table setting for 4. I really like to mix and match what I have, so older pieces with new pieces. These are some new things I had done at Leontine Linens here in New Orleans. And then these are the corresponding placemats. What are we serving for dinner? Actually, it's just gonna be grilled skirt steaks with some vegetables, so simple. But I always like to set a table. If people are making the effort to come over here and we're all gonna, cook together and bring things, why not use all of these things that we've got? So yeah, it's a little formal, but I don't know, why not? It's Sunday night. This is one of a pair. I have a decorator friend of mine in Jackson, Mississippi, and I saw these at an antique shop in Jackson, and I knew I had a feeling that they were his, that he was consigning. And so I texted him a picture. I said, "Are these yours?" And he goes, "Yeah." "How did you know?" I said, "I just know." I said, "I just bought them." So this is one of a pair. It's this gorgeous solid green marble. The other one is just in the guest room for now. I don't know what to do with it, but I love the way that it catches the light again, and it's really beautifully detailed. It's the most serious thing I think in the room. So this painting, actually, going back to the theme of things coming into my life again, this is a painting that I saw at a gallery a decade ago, and I couldn't buy it then, and it sold in the course of the years, and then someone, I guess, sold it back to the gallery or put it back in the gallery on consignment, and here it is now. It's the one I wanted from the very beginning. It's a Jim Richard. He's another New Orleans artist, and he's known for these incredibly unique and layered interior paintings. They're sort of blurry, and this is the only one that I've seen that's actually black and white, and so I loved it. It's called Dark Decor. Anyway, so here it is, finally in my home. So I love it. It's a recent purchase. So anyway, I feel like it really makes this room, and I'm happy to have it now. Another great painting in this room is from a friend of mine, Kevin Gillantine, and this is from his gallery on Magazine Street. I knew that I needed a giant piece of art here. Normally, I guess someone would put maybe a sideboard with lamps and a mirror or something. There just really isn't room, because going back to the layout of these shotgun houses, it's room, 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 room. So this really is a pathway back to the back of the house. So, and visually, this giant square really breaks up that long center wall that we talked about, where we're punctuating to join the 2 residences together to one. So I really love the way this catches the light. I love the colors, but yeah, happy to have this. So the living room fireplace is the only fireplace that had actual original tile still. These other fireplaces in the house, as you'll see, they just had some sort of weird builder white subway tile. So instead of just doing demo and tearing all of that out, I had my decorative painter come and do a faux marble. So each one has a different faux marble. So this is a Proturo faux marble. It just really elevated the fireplace to the level of the rest of the dining room. So this fireplace, you can see from the front door, and you'll see that. So I didn't want another thing hanging on a wall. So I mirrored this entire chimney breast with antique mirror and had these little pretty medallions made. This also reflects the light behind you, because there's only one window in this room. So it really does serve as like another window, basically. It brightens up the space. And then this is an old thrift store find. It's like a 1920s African head. And I got this at a charity auction, this acrylic bracket. So anyway, I thought it made sort of a big sculptural statement. Just like instead of another painting, another rectangle, it's nice to have something 3-dimensional. My favorite thing about this house is that it's a great house to have 4 people over for dinner, but it's also a great house to have 85 people for a fundraiser or a baby shower or whatever event. You can do anything in between, because I love it because I have a room like this where I can have cocktails with close friends and it feels intimate. And I have a couple of different spots where I can dine for different size parties. That's what I love about the house. It's a great entertaining house. Welcome to the kitchen. This kitchen has had quite a transformation from when I first purchased the house, but I managed to do it without tearing out any cabinetry. Everything was just white like Home Depot cabinetry. So I had my decorative painter do a strié glaze to make it all feel a little bit better than what it is. And then I changed out the hardware and I hand darkened each one of these brass knobs to give it some age. The counters were just like builder grade granite. So again, remnant sale at your local stone yard. This is old soapstone, and they somehow managed to just have enough to do the perimeter. This piece, I wanted to feel more like a piece of furniture, again, because all these rooms are so visually connected. It just felt so kitcheny to have just a kitchen island. So I had my carpenter do just a black walnut chopping block top, and then we lacquered the island for a furniture effect. And this also is just, you know, builder grade cabinetry that I had my carpenter do these simple shaker applied panels all around it to just elevate it and make it feel a little more expensive than what it really is. I wish this kitchen was a little bit smaller, but here we are. I wish this kitchen was like a little secret galley kitchen that was all stainless steel and like black marble top. That's kind of my dream kitchen. But this kitchen is so front and center. I really wanted to feel as the least like a kitchen as possible. So I packed it out with art, as you can see on this wall. And these are just things I've collected over time that sort of end up on this organic art wall. This has been rehung about 3 times to accommodate, you know, things moving here and there, additions, subtractions. I love the way that this old patinaed 18th century cabinet felt in this room. I believe it was part of a room. It was built into like a room, like all 4 corners of the room probably had one of these, but this is really the only one that's left. So in here, I have this collection of these stoneware platters. I have a lot more, but these are from my grandmother's house, and I remember using these as a kid, and I always loved them. They have this sort of crazy old patina on them, and I love that the gilding is a little bit worn off. Anyway, it makes me think of her whenever I use them. So I thought this was a great spot for them. And then just down below in here, this is overflow like party glasses. These are the champagne flutes that you don't care if somebody breaks, or just, you know, candles, like place setting things, just kind of a collection of party cups and champagne flutes. So it's a good way to hide all of that. So yeah, going with the non-kitchen kitchen. I really love this piece. This is probably one of my favorite pieces of art, and this is something that I coveted for a very long time. It's a George Dunbar, and it's clay with palladium and gold on it, and it's so layered. And you know, when you watch him make these pieces, he's so hands-on with this. He's using all these tools to do this, and this is one of his signature pieces. It's so heavy, but anyway, I love it. I love it's in the kitchen. I love looking at it every single day. Now that we've talked about my kitchen, follow me back into the more casual space of my home, the family room. Other than opening up the living room to that former 3rd bedroom and creating the study, this is the space that has undergone a significant amount of architectural change as well. So initially, this one set of French doors was here, and it sort of created this like long, dark corner of the house, and I really wasn't able to center a sofa on the wall. So I added another set of near matching French doors that I found at the Bank, which is an architectural salvage place here in New Orleans. Luckily, I found something almost exactly the same size, so it worked out. So now I have a center wall with a sofa anchored by a great John Alexander painting that I love, and more on that in a little bit. Other than the French doors, I added all of these built-in bookcases in lieu of a small closet that was back here. So now I have a spot for all of my design library books. I have a lot more at the office, but you know, designers have books. So I was also able to finally put out all of these vintage 80 magazines, Architectural Digest magazines that I use almost daily for design reference, inspiration. So here they are, and they continue over there. And of course, I have a lot more at my office. Other than that, I get to showcase my favorite color for painting the insides of bookcases, which is Fowler and Ball Fox Red. I use it a lot for clients as well. And I think it's the perfect backdrop for leather-bound books, objects, collections of things. It's a color, but it's not overwhelming. Lots of different ways to organize bookcases. I find that like a loose color blocking is a great way for me to visually corral all of these different objects here. So this is fun. Old school tech. However, it's great to have a record player, and looks like Holiday by America was the last thing we were listening to. So classic. This room is also great for small group entertaining. I really do love having 4 people for dinner back at this table. It really is an intimate setting. The light is so great early evening, especially with candlelight. And it just is a little relief from having a serious dinner in the dining room. This room is a multifunctional space. I mean, we do have to go outside through both of these doors. I've set up a bar over here just to give a purpose and some action to this side of the room. So this is an 18th century French piece that I got at auction that no one else bid on. So that's how I got it. And I've used it as a bar cabinet. So it takes the pressure off of the kitchen really to house all of the entertaining things. So down here I've got placemats. In this middle drawer we've got a color-coded collection of koozies. Always great to have. And then these top drawers are more usable and functional things like martini shakers, extra glassware, margarita salt, you know, everything to make a great cocktail. And it really gives this part of the room more of a destination where otherwise it would just be another dead corner. Here's our animal print moment for this room. As you know, every room in my house has something. This is an old club chair. It's an old Scalamandre model from Greg Jordan. So it's been in my life for a really long time. Back to the John Alexander. This is a piece going back to the theme of things coming back into my life. I was actually bidding on this painting for our client several years ago at New Orleans auction and was outbid by a friend. All is fair at the auction, right? So he was moving to Mexico City a year or so ago and asked me if I was still maybe interested in this John Alexander and would sell it to me for the hammer price. I said absolutely, because it is a fantastic thing and it really never left my mind. So it did come back to me. Okay, welcome to my bedroom. Always a work in progress in here. It's sometimes very difficult for a designer to decorate for themselves. And this room has been through about 4 different paint colors, ranging from sort of a desert tan called Alexandria Beige all the way through Fowler and Ball's setting plaster and a couple of things in between. But I think we finally hit the right note with this milky chocolate brown color with the white trim to contain it. So I love a bedroom to feel like moody and intimate and dark. So I feel like I've accomplished that here with this color. A couple other things in here, bedding. So I do like to change out the bedding a couple of times a year. It gives the bedroom a whole new look. So this is my more fall, winter bedding. And it's a combination of leontine linens and some Ralph Lauren paisley and a Matuk coverlet. I don't ever really like to do a set of bedding. I like the bed to feel a little more, I don't know, collected in a way, for lack of a better term. But in the summer though, it's more of this. It's more just ivory, simple, clean. But in the winter, I like to have a few more layers because, as you know, New Orleans houses get very cold and very drafty in the winter months. There's no insulation anywhere. The bed is one of my favorite pieces in here. I did have it made through Doorman Designs here in New Orleans. And I wanted sort of a loose, masculine kind of vibe. And I thought this iron canopy bed would be the ticket. I did customize it a little bit by doing a leather upholstered headboard for a little more softness in here. So just the overall vibe in here is very personal to me. And I know I mentioned that this room is still in flux, which it is. These are the old curtains, which will have a new life in the guest room as soon as the new ones come in. The fabric, of course, like everything else, is back ordered on a boat, on a crate somewhere at the bottom of the ocean. But anyway, it'll get here eventually. I do love these curtains though. These actually have been in my life for a very long time. Funny story, I pulled them out of a dumpster on a job site 25 years ago, and they were about twice as long. So obviously I had them cleaned and shortened. So they've been somehow, in some way, shape, or form, in my homes since then. So they'll keep living in a different room. This is another of the original fireplaces in the house. It too was a coal burning fireplace that has since been bricked up. This one had some very ugly tile. So what I did, instead of doing any demo, I used remnants of the antique mercury mirror from the dining room and did a fireplace around here. Again, it's kind of like a dark corner. I wanted to brighten it up, some sparkle. I did add a little bit of Farrow & Ball's mahogany paint to the mantle. Again, in the high gloss, for a little gloss, a little sheen, a little glitter. And I think it makes something a moment where there really wasn't a moment back in here. So I think that's it for my bedroom. And thank you so much for touring my home with me. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I do. The word home means somewhere where I can be myself, express my design sensibilities, and have the people that I care about and love around me in a comfortable and elegant way.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm River Spencer. Come on in and let's take a look around my house.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
I'm River Spencer. I'm an interior designer based in New Orleans, Louisiana. I do work throughout the city of New Orleans as well as the Southeast and all parts of the United States. I live here with my husband, Guy, and my chocolate lab, Birdie, and then Busy, my beagle mix. So the reason that I was drawn to this particular home when I was searching for our first home as a married couple was multiple reasons. This home does have some age on it. The original part of the house was built in the 1890s, and then it was added on to, I think, several times. It's on a double lot in uptown New Orleans, and it's gated all the way around, and that was helpful with having dogs. I did have to do extensive renovations to the house since we bought it 7 years ago, and I continue to do renovations on it over time, adding things. But I was really drawn to it because of the layout. In uptown New Orleans, because the houses were built so long ago, the floor plans don't really lend themselves to modern amenities. In this house, we use every single inch of this house in a functional way, and we're able to have a larger kitchen space, nicely sized bathrooms and closets. Welcome to my kitchen and breakfast area. This was the first space that I tackled when my husband and I bought the house about 7 years ago. It had awful tile on the floor, and we renovated the entire thing. But I'm lucky to have this elongated space where I'm able to have like a long island and then have enough room to have storage everywhere. I took the cabinets to the ceiling. I matched the original floors with what we call pickling in New Orleans. They're antique pine floors that we then use several different stains to create a layered grayish white kind of tint. And that's kind of a thing that's unique to New Orleans. And I decided to do that throughout the first floor. But this was the initial space that I decided to renovate when we moved in. I chose premium Calicotta marble, which was quite the investment. And it took, 5 slabs, 3cm slabs to get installed, but I love that it has a lot of movement. With a completely white backdrop of my kitchen, it gives the space interest because it has so much veining, and it even has some deposits, some iron deposits in it, which most people don't really like, but I like how natural it makes it look. As far as being an interior designer and choosing things for my clients, one of the biggest questions I get is, why marble? It stains, it's porous. And to me, I look at it like it's a natural stone. It's a living stone. And so over time, it's going to develop a patina. You have to think about all these old bars in New Orleans or in Paris even that have etching and stain on them, and it just gives them more richness. You don't want everything to be sterile. And one of the things that I have to fight against when I'm designing any space is to not make it sterile. I want everything to be neat and clean and symmetrical and perfect, but you have to add in that warmth to be able to achieve something that's really unique and special in a work of art. I love this area, which I kind of use like a makeshift butler's pantry. And I have a lot of different collected sort of seasonal serving dishes. I've got my grandmother's china. One of my favorite things that everybody on Instagram loves to see is my custom silverware drawer. So when my maternal grandmother died, every cousin got to choose a diamond ring of hers. I said, y'all can have the diamonds. I want the silver. So I got her silver, and this is what I did. So you might want to get a close up. But this is a custom felt lined Barbie pink silverware drawer for my silver, and I entertain a lot. My husband and I don't have kids. We live here with our 2 dogs, but we do have a lot of dinner parties and formal parties and have people over and entertain all the time. And it's one of the things that I really enjoy about this house is that it lends itself to nice entertaining. As you can see, it's a long linear space, and we're able to have casual dinners where we entertain at the bar. And then also every morning we'll have breakfast together and read the paper and talk at this breakfast table over here. One of the main things that I was interested in when I was renovating the kitchen, other than creating really that classic kitchen look, was taking the cabinets all the way to the ceiling. It's one of my pet peeves in houses is when you have tall ceilings, which 12-foot ceilings make everything look better, is to really take the cabinets all the way to the ceiling and then wrap the crown all the way around. And I chose a 3-piece crown for that. Everyone is always asking what my go-to paint colors are, and I sort of alternate depending on the style. In this kitchen, I chose Benjamin Moore OC17 White Dove. And one little trick that I actually use in my design work is when I'm working with whites, I don't change the color or shade of white that I'm working with, and I don't change the hue. I change the sheen, but use the same color. And it allows your eye to just effortlessly kind of go over the entire space without being stopped by one white that makes another one look yellow or gray, and everything looks different in every space depending on the way that the light hits it. So that's just one little tip. One other sort of thing that I use to create warmth, depth, or interest in a space is by collecting things, and I think this is really special. These are little spice jars that a dear friend of mine gave me for my birthday one year, and she said that she had been collecting them off of eBay for several years before giving them to me. And so they're these little vintage from the 90s Lenox carousel spice jars. I think it's kind of neat touch. I used lavender as an accent in this room, and you'll notice over here where the breakfast area is, this beautiful Mallory Page painting. Mallory Page is a New Orleans artist, and a little known fact about her is that she is the daughter-in-law of George Rodrigue, who's the Blue Dog guy. Mallory is an established artist in her own right, and she creates beautiful, emotional and thoughtful abstracts. And I got this piece, I believe, through Martine Chasson, who represents her here in New Orleans. Another piece of art that I use to sort of punctuate the design in the kitchen is this portrait of our beagle, Busy. And it, again, has lavender, lilac and lavender hues, and it is by New Orleans artist Jason Horton, who does these beautiful, realistic animal portraits, among other things. One other thing that I would note with my kitchen is this Murano glass Italian custom lilac chandelier that I commissioned. So another thing that I find important in a kitchen is treating the hardware and the plumbing fixtures sort of the way you would treat accents or jewelry. So I used all roll fixtures, and on my kitchen I used a roll bridge, but it's more of a transitional to modern look. It's not the traditional bridge faucet. Can't remember the name of this one. And then I used another roll over here. And this is the type of finish that it is unlacquered brass, meaning it's a living finish that can tarnish over time. And a lot of the design questions I get are based off of, what finish should I do if I do brass? Well, first I get, can I mix metals? The answer is yes. I chose not to here. The next most asked question is, if I do brass, what finish do I use? Do I use one that will always look brass, or should I use the one that's unlacquered brass that will change over time? And it's a personal decision. If it bothers you, then you want to use a lacquered brass. And if it doesn't bother you, then I think that an unlacquered brass that patinas over time is more interesting. Now I'm going to take you into my foyer. Right, this is our foyer, and it has a connecting hallway that makes it kind of smaller and linear, so there's not much of an opportunity before you hit the stairs to do anything, but I always have a vignette here, and it does change over time. But the one thing that really stays in my foyer is this beautiful painting by my friend Kevin Gillentine. Kevin Gillentine is a wonderful New Orleans artist who's originally from Tupelo, Mississippi, and he and his partner Vincent are dear friends of mine. I use a lot of his artwork in my designs because his landscapes that are abstracted are very calming, they're ethereal, and I just find them to be very beautiful. So I've had this piece for a long time, and it is the one thing that has stayed. Right now, I have this beautiful antique console. I love to have something that's kind of crusty with a marble top. And then it's accompanied by this antique fauteuil. And I'll explain the difference between a French bergère and a French fauteuil, which is a very common question that I get in my design practice. And we just call it a fauteuil, meaning an armchair, because it is not connected from here to here. If it were connected, it would be what we call a bergère. So anyway, that's just a little lesson. It has a little lumbar pillow that has antique vestments on it from one of my best friend's aunt is the maker of these pillows, Emily Alexander. The next thing that I'd like to tell you about my foyer is this antique pedestal. It's a neoclassical pedestal. I believe that it's 19th century. I'm not sure. I just know that it's neoclassical. And then this piece of art, which this sculpture artist's name is Rod Moorhead, and he works out of Oxford, Mississippi, which I went to Ole Miss. So it's nice to have sort of meaning or an attachment to one of the pieces of art that I have. But I love the pieces that he does. They're so unique. This is a Fury. He does a very limited amount of Furies, and I actually have 2 of them. So it was hard to find something to sort of dress the foyer up while still paying attention to scale and not overcrowding it with furniture. And this was a good way to do that. So if you have a very narrow space in your home, a pedestal and a sculpture on top is a good way to dress that space. Right off of my entryway is what we use as our powder room. It's actually a full bath, but we don't use it that way. We don't really need the other part of it. So I just put up this Leontine Linens shower curtain. And Leontine Linens is a New Orleans-based fine linen company. Look it up, you won't regret it. The powder room is swathed in this Lee Joffa grass cloth. It's floral, it's very girly. And it's one of the spaces that's so small that I was able to kind of go over the top with it. I didn't actually replace the console sink that was already here, but I did upgrade the plumbing, and y'all heard me talk about how I like to use plumbing fixtures as like the jewelry of the house. And this is an exceptionally beautiful, I think it's Perrin and Rowe fixture, and I love kind of how ornate it is. And then above it is this Venetian mirror that I found in Parma while I was traveling and sourcing antiques. And then it's accompanied by some Julie Neal, who's another New Orleans lighting designer, sconces. And then we just had my workroom make this custom silk skirt. This is actually Josh Young, who's a great artist out of DC. I think this is just a print. And I liked the idea of, I changed this around a lot, but I liked the idea of using this like very modern piece next to this very frilly traditional wallpaper. And so that's kind of what I mean when I talk about creating tension in order to create good design or interest in a space. The only thing I'll really say other than that about the powder room is that I had my wallpaper hanger cover my trash can in the grass cloth, which was kind of fun. I would say that I land somewhere in between traditional and transitional style. However, I have a big emphasis on antiques and the curation of collections and special pieces that I collect over time. I like clean lines, and I use a lot of restraint. So, you know, Coco Chanel has that line, like when you're getting dressed and you look in the mirror, you're about to walk out the door, always take one thing off. And I apply that mantra to my interior design aesthetic. So I guess I would say that I like to create spaces that have a specific sense of place and point of view, which I'm sure all interior designers do that, but for me it's more about collecting things over time to lend depth to a space, like using original art, which I'll show you as we tour my house. Now come with me into my double parlor. So this space, as you can see, is very large and very linear. So I believe the rug that I have in here is 26 feet long by like 13 and a half. The intention with that, and I started with that, it's a beautiful stark rug, and Stark rugs are simply the best. The intention with that was to unify the space. If you have a space that's sort of awkward architecturally, the best way to make that space feel warm or feel like one space totally is to do a rug that's as big as you can do it. It'll make it feel cozy and then also cohesive at the same time. The room, as you can see, is covered in Susan Harder wallpaper. So it's actually, she's an artist and she's based, I think, in Washington State. And she took her artwork and then created this wallpaper company and scales it onto your wall. And it's kind of like working with Graci or decor. It's a very high-end wallpaper company and it's very involved. You have to provide elevation. So you always want to go through an interior designer if you're choosing to use one of Susan Harder's papers. I chose this one to wrap my space in for another unifying aspect, and also because of the soft, soothing colors and the backdrop that it provides. So it also makes the space feel warm. I mean, I have 12-foot ceilings and then just a very long room. So you're trying initially when you're designing a space to make it feel like one whole thing. Another trick I used was to create different conversational areas with the layout. So I have two back-to-back sofas with a console in between, and these are wonderful Baker sofas. And something that I'll say about large scale upholstery, and as you can see, my dog Birdie has already gotten on the sofa. So it's a constant battle for me to keep things clean. But one of the things that I do for my clients and for myself is to try and use indoor-outdoor fabric whenever I can. So this is an indoor-outdoor boucle. And fabrics, performance fabrics have come a long way in the past couple of years. So I would look into that if you're looking to recover a large piece of upholstery. And while I'm on that, I will say that people are always saying, well, I don't want to use white because it will show dirt. And my response to that is, well, wouldn't you rather know if you're sitting in filth and that you need to clean your sofa? The dirt is still there. So, and in the same vein of using, different shades of neutrals for large scale upholstery, which obviously I did here, you want to kind of counteract that with by using collected pieces so it doesn't feel too sterile or staged, but also using antiques. And again, I'll go back to like the warm wood. I use different time periods of antiques in the same space, and you have, in order to really do that well to where it looks like everything is talking to each other and it makes sense, you have to understand a little bit more of the history of antiques and know what you're talking about in order to do that well. But again, if you love something, then let it ride. So I punctuated my very neutral upholstery, my neutral large rug with collected pieces that then have accent fabrics. So like, for example, when I'm doing pillows, I'll often use like a more modern, this is a Scalamandra fabric mixed with a traditional damask Fortuny. And yes, I am letting my dog be next to my Fortuny pillows, and that's just part of it. So this area, this conversation area, is really used for TV. And you'll see behind you, there's a really big bookshelf and a frame TV, which helps. Like, that's a good tip for if you want to have modern amenities, but you want it to look good. You can always use a frame TV and put a nice bezel on it. And you can, when you're not watching it, you could show artwork on it. So this area is really used in a more casual way, whereas this area on the other side of the room is used more for entertaining. So we'll have like a game night and people will sit over here, or if we're having a dinner party, we'll have cocktails on this side of the room. And if it's a larger party, obviously we'll use both. But I liked creating an original layout for this space. One of my favorite things in this room is this wall of mirrors, which this is just a bunch of collected sunburst and smaller antique mirrors that I had installed as sort of one piece of art. And then this painting here is actually by my own mother. So the one that I really, really wanted, I couldn't afford at this point, and I needed something for a photo shoot. And I said, Mom, will you please create an abstract for me? And she dutifully did it, and I think it looks great. I don't even want the, really fancy, expensive one anymore. And it has meaning because my mother did it for me. This vignette, which I love an antique, obviously, and a lot of people find Biedermeier, which is what this piece is right here, to be a little bit more masculine, and because it has accents of black, they're not as drawn to it as maybe they are to a Louis XVI piece or a pretty burlwood chest. This is a beautiful burlwood, but it is Biedermeier. Biedermeier tends to be a little bit more orange because of the wood that it's made out of, and it is Austrian or German rather than French or Italian. But I love this piece because of its masculine energy. And then I juxtaposed it with this beautiful abstract piece, which if you can't really tell unless the light hits it in a certain way or you get close to it. But this is Karina Gentinetta, and she is represented, I believe, in Atlanta by Prior Fine Art, and then Alpha Gallery in Boston. I think those are the only two places where you can get her work. But I loved the coloring of this, and I thought that it offset the soft blues and greens really well in the room, and made a nice, strong statement. And sometimes a trick that I'll use when creating a tall vignette like this with 12-foot ceilings is, so you have a chest, and then you have an abstract above it, and then sometimes I will pair an antique mirror, whether it's a Venetian or a smaller scale 18th century Paraclos mirror like this over it, and it just creates a really nice vertical moment. The next thing that I'd like to point out about the space is that instead of using a traditional light fixture, I chose to use a more modern light fixture it's a Julie Neal, again, a New Orleans lighting designer, a Julie Neal piece that I think was inspired by some Italian lighting from the 70s, but she used different materials, different scale, all of that. And I just felt that it added sort of a fun air to the space, because you don't want anything to be too staid, crusty, or still. You want to create something that a space that feels alive. And so to me, that was a nice way to do it. The house didn't come with these beautiful medallions, but luckily in New Orleans, we have such amazing resources that you can go to places like Ricca's Architectural Hardware or this place called The Bank, and you can get beautiful ceiling medallions. And so I did that for several spaces in the house. And if you look up, one of the most interesting things about this room was that I put lattice on the ceiling. And that is a different choice that not a lot of people would make, but I used it as a unifying feature for the double parlor, and to just, create interest for the space. My contractor was very confused. So was my husband. And it took a lot of math, and I'm not great at that. So it was a labor of love, definitely, when we renovated and put it in, but I think it's worth it, and I enjoy it. And it's been there about 7 years now, and I don't want to change it, so that's saying something. Next, I will talk to you about these beautiful chairs, which one of the ways that I like to create interest in a space, because I'm using limited color often, is these are actually cowhide upholstered antique chairs that I got from somewhere in Dallas. And then I added this Samuel & Sons beautiful gimp to trim them out. But if you're looking to create a neutral palette, but to still make it interesting, you can always vary texture, and that's a really good example of that. So one of the architecturally interesting elements of this room is this fireplace, which is original to the original part of the house. So from the 1890s. And a lot of the uptown New Orleans fireplaces don't work, and it would take a lot to get them working. There's a fireplace on this side and also on the other side of my husband's study, and neither of them work, which I really wish they did. And if we stay here long enough, I may fight to get it working. I love a working fireplace. But what's interesting about this is that it had its original, what we call a summer cover. And these are actually hard, it's hard to find them with their original summer covers on them. It was black, they're usually black, but I didn't like the way it looked, so I painted it. It also had a tile that I didn't like, so I did change that. And purists wouldn't want to do that, but I believe in creating things that you love. So I think it's okay to change like a surround on a fireplace mantle like this. So I just used some leftover stone from my kitchen renovation, and it is premium Calicut Gold. And then above the fireplace, these types of mirrors, a Tremont mirror, it's something I use quite often in my design work. So especially when I had my antique store, I had a lot of these, and I have a thing for antique mirrors. So obviously you can see. So this is an original, I don't think it's period, but it is a Louis XVI French Tremont. You can tell that it is older because it has the original glass in it. If you ever see like a line running through a large Tremont like this, and they're two pieces of glass, you can tell that it's the original glass, which shows age on the mirror. I will say that technically calling it this a Tremont isn't completely 100% correct, but we do that anyway. If it were a real Tremont that actually came out of a chateau, it would have an actual painting above where the mirror portion is. But I don't really like those. So I like the ones that have the carvings above them. But this is a particularly nice one that I've had for a long time. And I think that the scale works really well. New Orleans is one of the only places, maybe Charleston being another one, but they don't really love French, where you can use pieces like this because the ceilings are so high. Most ceilings in New Orleans are 12 feet, and I think, I want to misspeak, but I think that's mostly because of how hot it was here before air conditioning, and heat rises. So, but it does create a nice interior environment. So another example of creating collections and layering in antique and vintage pieces in a house. This is a good example, and I love to have fresh flowers, and I'll show you in a little bit where I do my cutting. And I just put a little bit of fresh viburnum and lisianthus. This is a vintage crystal vase, and I have them in all different shapes and sizes. This one is Waterford. Some of them are, some of them are not. But I keep a collection of both inherited from my mother-in-law, and then some from my grandmother, some from my mother, and then some bought or thrifted at different antique booths, shops around. You can find wonderful crystal at the most unexpected places. So it doesn't have to be an expensive, fancy shop, because for some reason people don't value these things as much anymore, and I love them. So I make sure to have a big collection of crystal vases, and I try and keep fresh flowers in them every week. Obviously, I did a little something special this week for these, but you'll see punctuated throughout my house different sizes of crystal vases with flowers in them. So right off of my double parlor is my dining area. So the dining room in my house plays a large role because I entertain a lot. I have a lot of different custom linens, different place settings. I even have inherited some beautiful chargers from my grandmother, and I really like to have people over and be in my space and entertain. And ultimately, you want to create an environment that is both beautiful but also comfortable for your guests. and I focus on that a lot. That being said, the table that you see here is actually something that I designed. So I drew it and then gave it to, it is completely made out of marble, and it has two big fluted marble bases. It took, I don't know, 7 men with a ramp to get it in here. And my husband sometimes worries about it falling through the floor because our house is raised, like most houses in New Orleans. It's raised so it doesn't flood. The table is a very modern moment for me, and so it is juxtaposed with these, and these are actually newer chairs. I mean, they're made in North Carolina chairs instead of antique, but they are more traditional in look. They are Louis XVI style chairs that I had covered in a performance velvet, this just a very neutral champagne velvet. So if you have any spills, you don't really have to worry about it. And then I had my workroom create this runner out of the same fabric. And I always like to have a table runner on my table. I just think it makes it look a little bit more finished. And I love my, I think these are about 120 years old, candelabra, my silver candelabra. I actually got them from Worthmore Antiques on Magazine Street. And Magazine Street is just such a mecca for antiques. And so if that's something you're interested in, I would highly recommend exploring all of the wonderful shops on Magazine Street. Anyway, the rug that I used underneath the dining table is an Uşak rug. Uşak rugs are Turkish. It's named for a region as well as a type of pattern. And I like to use Uşak rugs that are lighter in color. You find them, they run the gamut in color. You can get very vibrant ones or very subdued ones, and I like the more subdued ones. And you can always tell the quality of a rug based off of the pile. Well, that's one of the things you can tell about it. So if it's an Uşak with a lower pile and it's actually from Turkey, then it is a real Uşak and it is a nice high quality rug. It does not have to be vintage or antique for it to have value and be a nice rug. It can just kind of look like that. They jump way up in price when you go to actual vintage or antique Uşak rugs. The next piece that I'll talk about, while I'll talk about this whole vignette, is, and this is a good example of creating tension and juxtaposition in design to create good design. So, in my opinion, because all of this is subjective after all. So this enfilade or buffet sideboard that I will talk about is, I purchased it from Jan Showers, who I admire and love so much and has been so kind to me. She has a wonderful showroom in Dallas that everyone should visit. But this is an antique that she told me she bought at the Pouce, the Saint-Ouen, the Marshall Pouce, which is the famed antique market in France, which is where a lot of us in the trade buy things. And now the pricing has just gotten out of control over the past 10 years. But when I first started doing this, that was where a lot of things came from, and still some things. But anyway, Jan said that she got this piece, which is actually an art moderne, which is the period that comes like directly after Art Deco. An art moderne buffet from the late 1920s. So it's just barely considered an antique rather than vintage, because it has to be 100 years old if it's going to be, generally, to be considered an antique, and vintage is about 25 years old. This is a very clean lined, dark piece of beautiful wood furniture with nice brass ferrules on it. And I love a pretty feminine cabriole leg. So it's very clean in its design. And then it's juxtaposed with this very ornate, feminine, I believe it's either Louis XIV or Louis XV. I couldn't get a straight answer out of the dealer I bought it from at the Marché Biron, which is part of the Pouce in Paris. And I found this on one of my travels, probably 10 years ago now. And it was mostly intact, which I was grateful for, because you don't really find mirrors of this scale and caliber and carving with all the florets and everything on it that are still intact. Now the mirror part is a little bit broken and most people would want that fixed, but it doesn't bother me. I think it adds to the patina. So the point that I continuously keep trying to make is to create good design, use something clean lined with something that's very ornate, and you create visual tension in that way. So this mirror serves as the very ornate antique piece, whereas this is the cleaner, more modern piece that sits beneath it. This is also very functional because it's holding all of my linens and some of my china. These are Ralph Lauren lamps, just very clean and a little bit more masculine. And then I do these arrangements of hydrangeas and garden roses. Well, actually, these are spray roses. I meant to have garden roses, but they ran out. And this is a beautiful rock crystal bowl that I usually keep here or in the center. This light fixture, again, is another Julie Neal that's inspired by an Italian 70s waterfall chandelier. And I think it just adds a lot of glamour to the space. And you'll see at the top where the canopy is, I've got another one of those beautiful New Orleans medallions. So these are antique oyster plates. Most are sourced from different places in New Orleans, some off eBay, some from Etsy, some from antique fairs, and then some from Moss Antiques in New Orleans is a wonderful source for antique oyster plates. And I think it's important to, when sort of building your home, and again, it's probably the last layer that you're putting in, is to create collections, because collections create interest. And don't just collect, maybe you really love abstract fine art paintings and they're on canvas, but it's important to have different types of art. So this is an installation of art of a collection of antique oyster plates that creates more interest instead of just having another flat painting on the wall. So in terms of interior design, it's good to mix it up with the types of art that you create in a space. So I just had these hung in this kind of pattern, and they act as the artwork on the wall. It's hard when you are trying to decorate a space that has a beautiful wallpaper on it, because you want to be kind of sparing in the art that you use, and that it doesn't compete too much with the backdrop of your investment in the wallpaper. Another way to sort of add jewelry to the home is to use surface bolts on some of your doors. So these are French doors that actually lead out to a little brick patio, and to dress them up, instead of putting a window treatment over them and treating them like a window, I just added some hardware here. And then another little weird thing that you may or may not want to pick up on all of our door stops, I ordered brass door stops and like got rid of the ones that were there. They're just little white ones, builder grade, that come with the house. I graduated college in 2008. Obviously, the Great Recession was going on, and everyone in my family is an attorney. My mom is a retired litigator turned oil painter. My dad's an oil and gas attorney. I'm originally from Jackson, Mississippi, and I moved back from DC with the intention of going to law school. I then taught myself how to faux finish furniture and read everything that I could about antiques and interior design. Somehow convinced my parents at 25 to give me a loan to start my first business and open an antique shop on Magazine Street, which I did. And I did have to pay them back, by the way. And that was 14 years ago that I started. And so I had an antique shop which morphed into like a lifestyle boutique. At one point I bought a clothing store. So interior design, antiques, and then ultimately clothing. And I had that for, I think, about 11 years. And then during COVID, the city just completely shut down, and it just became sort of untenable to continue my career in that way. And so I shifted, and now I just do private interior design jobs. I have the bug for wanting to collect, and some might call it a shopping problem. But I'm considering going back into that field a little bit and just importing antiques and selling them, you know, through my website or something. But brick and mortar really isn't in the cards anymore, which makes a lot of people sad. We are now in my husband's study and home office. I think the most distinctive thing about this room is it's a change in the feel of the house. So this is a much moodier room, and I love to do that in a library or a study or a billiards room or a room that's meant to be more masculine in nature. And I use the design technique of color washing, meaning I painted the ceiling, the trim, and the walls all the same color. So it's enveloped in this envelope of a high gloss Pharaoh and Ball color. And everyone always asks me on Instagram, here's your chance to know, it is Pharaoh and Ball denim. So this color is, I think, kind of makes the entire space. Guy loves it because it's not feminine, kind of like the rest of the house has a bit of a feminine bent. My design style does too. But he likes that he can work well in here. He doesn't like to have a lot of light. He works with computers and doesn't like to have a lot of light when he's working. We did do some built-in bookshelves here, and we actually have real books along with some mementos from our relationship and from his childhood as well, interspersed in the bookshelves. I chose another interesting architectural brass fixture. This is a leaf chandelier by New Orleans artist Julie Neal again. I'm a fan of hers. And then we have a Kelly Wearstler brass, sort of more modern mid-century lamp, some Ralph Lauren sconces over there on the windowsill. And then my favorite piece in the room, other than the artwork that's in here, is this beautiful Austrian I believe it's 18th century desk, and it has these beautiful cabriole legs, and it's got a lot of inlay and marquetry in it. And Guy actually found his own work chair, which I think this is a vintage Knoll work chair and office chair, and this is the only thing in the house other than, you know, some smaller things that I let him keep of his when we got married, but it actually works with the space. And then we complemented it with one of my favorite pieces of art in the house, which this sort of lends itself to what I was saying earlier about having different types of art on your wall and to collect them over time. This is a Jack Spencer photograph, no relation to me. He is an artist, I believe he's from Mississippi, but lives in Nashville, Tennessee. I got this through Fisher Gallery in Jackson, Mississippi, which is where I'm from. They have an amazing roster of artists, so check out Fisher Gallery if you have a chance. But I love this piece. It is baptismal candidates in the Mississippi Delta. And I believe the photograph is from sometime in the mid-90s, and then it's framed in this heavy gold frame. Beneath that is a vintage burlwood mid-century bar cart. I don't generally use mid-century items, but I wanted to use a more masculine bar cart in Guy's office rather than like a brass is what I would generally do. The rug is another stark carpet that's in a custom style that's self-bound. And then I've got a very traditional sofa with an inverted Charles of London arm and a waterfall skirt next to this plaid, another traditional chair, but it's in this lovely Holland & Sherry plaid. And I think something interesting about Holland & Sherry, which is a company that's a go-to for me when I'm doing a more masculine space, is that they were actually originally, and I think still are, high-end tailors on Savile Row, and they started their interior design part of their business, the fabrics, I think maybe in the late 90s. I may be saying that wrong, but I love to use their plaids and their more masculine fabrics. And I think by having one item in the room that is in a heavier pattern, gives it more depth. And I don't generally use big pattern on large scale upholstery, but I thought that it was right in this setting. I've got another Holland & Sherry wool on the window treatments. And then another interesting thing about this room is this is another antique end table. And above it, I have this painting that I actually gave Guy for our 5th wedding anniversary. And what's special about it, I got it from Brown's Fine Art and Framing in Jackson, Mississippi, which is again where I'm from originally. And this is by the artist Tommy Goodman. And what's special about this to Guy is that his father, who's now deceased, Tommy was his father's college roommate, I think. Anyway, they're very close friends, and Tommy is a celebrated Mississippi artist. And then above that is another special piece to us. This past Christmas, our very close friends gave Guy this antique World War I French hunting rifle. And obviously we don't fire it. It's used more as a piece of art. But I think it's always nice to have things that have specific meaning to you, and it's a plus that they look good together. So that's a nice way to top off a painting if you're not going to use a gallery light or a mirror or something else. The next thing I'll point out in the space is this series of Vanity Fair gentlemen. So these are actually from the late 1800s to the 1890s, and there are a limited number of these, and you can find them. Well, it's hard to find them now, but I found them on Magazine Street at a friend's shop and then had them framed. And there's a set of 9 of them, but they're different gentlemen. And it's a nice, it's nice in scale to have, the different pieces and then just to not have another canvas in the same space. This above me is this has several meanings for Guy and myself. This is a Bill Dunlap. So Bill Dunlap, or William Dunlap, is a very famous Southern artist and Mississippi artist. And he has a series of beagles. And this is actually a lithograph that Guy got at an auction for me for my birthday probably 8 or 9 years ago. I was out of town and he went to an auction by himself, and he did really well here. I might have been upset with something else, but I'm glad that we have a Dunlap, and it has multiple meanings because we have a beagle mix busy. So beneath that is an antique map from the 1800s of the state of Mississippi. The final thing, or sort of penultimate thing I will talk about, this is the other side of that mantle that we saw in my double parlor living space. And these are some vintage or antique urns that one of my dear friends gave me for Christmas. And then this is another antique Tremont, though it's slightly different in its shape. I love an antique Tremont over a mantle. This is an antique typewriter, and it came with this note, and we received it on our wedding day from one of Guy's more eccentric friends. And he left us a very sweet note, and then this antique typewriter that sits on our shelves here. We don't use it. Let's head to the mudroom and laundry room space. Follow me. Okay, so we are now in what I use as a multifunctional space. This is both a mudroom, a laundry room, a dog washing space, a dog feeding space, as well as a flower cutting room and arranging space. There's also storage for things with all of this tall cabinetry. So this is truly a multifunctional room. We added this kind of recently in the past couple of years. Guy and I decided to, instead of adding onto the house, to just enclose a porch that was upstairs, which became my closet and dressing room. And then this porch, this was originally a porch that now has become our multifunctional mudroom and laundry room. So this is our laundry space. And it's got tons of storage. I keep all the things that I use on a regular basis up on the counter and organized. This guy recently added as a hanging rack, although I'm not sure that I love it or that he hung it straight, but that happens sometimes when you don't hire professionals and your husband installs stuff. So this was a very pretty architectural mirror that I added when I was designing this space. And I don't know if you can tell, but I did this like special marble backsplash for on top of the washer and dryer. I try to keep my plants alive and sort of interspersed throughout the house to give the house more warmth. When you have so much stone and white and everything, you want to warm it up with live plants. This space here is very custom. We had it built for our dogs. So this is a feeding and watering station for both dogs, as well as where we keep, you know, their food and treats and everything organized. I use special hardware. I love these latches. And again, they're the unlacquered, so they have the patina on them. And I think it's okay to mix different styles of hardware in a space. So like I have latches on some of these, and then I have pulls here, and then I have, you know, double hook pulls down here. I think as long as they're the same finish and it's appropriate in the application, it's fine. I unified this space by using several different design elements, one of which was the hardware. The other was on some of the cabinets, because they were in such a small space, so tall, I wanted to differentiate some of them, and I used these brass grills that you have to custom order. They take forever. I think they ship out of England or something, and they're hard to measure, so make sure to consult a professional if you decide to go this route. But instead of a regular cabinet front, I used these brass mesh grills, which can work in many different applications. I've used them in butlers' pantries and kitchens before, for example. Another way that I unified the design of this space was to use these brass railings. I did them here and then over there above shelving where I keep all of my flower vases and flower arranging and gardening things. The next thing that I'll talk about here is this dog bath. So most people wouldn't commit to this strong. We really needed to get them out of our bathroom and making a mess in there, and now they make a mess in here. So I had this custom dog bath built next to their dog station, and then on the other side is my flower arranging station. And I actually used more roll fixtures in here for their bath. But this is actually multifunctional for me when I have photo shoots or I'm, you know, hosting a party or whatever. I can use big floral buckets in here, and so it will hold my my flowers before I get to arranging them. One of the things that I like to do on a weekly basis is whether I'm getting them from a wholesale florist or from a shop on Magazine Street or just from the grocery store. I love to have fresh flowers in my house. It's a hobby of mine. I know that it's expensive, but it really makes me happy. And so that's one of the things that I do for myself. And I use this station here to do it. So I have a whole other apron front farmhouse sink, and then this little bar faucet and sprayer, and then a stack of marble shelves where I keep all of my my flower vases, as well as my little copper watering pan, and then these pails I use to separate flowers out. I think it's really important for people who are interested in learning more about interior design or antiques to educate themselves. It's my opinion that you can really only speak originally on a subject when you have taken the time to learn the canon of what exists out there. And the best thing you can do to hone your skills, hone your eye, is to expose yourself, you know, travel, and travel. And then one of the weird things I did to learn about antiques, and now my mother has been an antiques collector my entire life, so I've always been around that. And I grew up in a house with a lot of antiques. A lot of Southern homes are like that. Really focus on teaching yourself, and I would read auction catalogs. So this was when I was first starting, and I would stop and look up every single word that I didn't understand, and then make sure that I like Googled and saw enough examples of one thing in order to commit that to memory. And that kind of that informs the way that I design. I'm always looking to learn something more. So I guess what I would say in terms of advice to anybody who's looking for it would be just be interested. And if you are passionate about anything and interested enough in something, and then actually do the work to learn about that subject matter, I think that you can conquer anything. Now we're ready to head upstairs. Follow me. So one thing I'll point out as we head upstairs is that when I'm designing a house and in my own house, I love doing a stair runner to sort of soften it. And then I use these gold rods as another example of like jewelry in the home. So I just wanted to point that out as we go up the stairs. Welcome to my primary suite. Sorry, my husband and my primary suite. I have a problem with that. This room is where I spend a lot of my time, and I always want a bedroom, whether I'm designing it for a client or for myself, to feel like a retreat. So I recently made over this room. It used to have wallpaper and a lot of color, and I decided I really wanted a more modern look, and I wanted it to be calmer and have a backdrop of a white palette. So one of the tricks that you can use when you want a room to be painted all white is you can add interest by adding something like, I have a half canopy here, which adds interest into the room, and then also applied molding just directly onto the sheetrock. You don't necessarily have to do full wood paneling or wainscoting. You can just do a chair rail and then some applied molding, which is what I did here. The bed was custom made by my upholsterer here in New Orleans. I just showed him a photo, an inspiration photo and a drawing, and he can really make anything, and it's quite impressive. And then as far as bedding, I like to actually change up my bedding. So right now what you're looking at is some custom Euros, and this is one of my favorite fabrics. I believe it's a Scalamandra, and I like that it pulls out, well, first of all, I like that it is an organic fabric against a more modern design of a bed, and that it pulls out this beautiful blue silk that I have on the interior of the canopy. So it's adding interest. So when I do the bed, I always use 2 king sleeper pillows, and my favorite inserts are actually, it's unexpected, but Boll and Branch has the best inserts in my opinion. So I use 2 on each side and then lay them flat with the this part going in, which is something I learned. And then in front of the 3 Euroshams on a king bed, I've got these 2 king shams in front, and then I always use a bolster. A lot of people find this annoying. My husband makes fun of me, too many pillows, but I love a really well done over the top bed. So underneath that, I've got a coverlet that I tuck in, and then a duvet at the end, and I am freezing all the time, so I pull this up and he kicks it off. The next thing that I think is interesting in this space are these, it's hard to find a pair these days. So this is a pair of antique Biedermeier nightstands that I actually found when I was in Dallas doing Kips Bay in 2023 from the Blueprint store. And they were a little spendy and quite the investment, but I love the proportion. I love the look of them, and I will probably keep them for forever. There are many things in my house that I could part with, but I don't think these are one of them. So they're paired with some modern Ralph Lauren lamps, and then above the nightstands on either side, I've got these beautiful Venetian mirrors. So it's another pair, an antique pair of Venetian mirrors that I found while I was in Parma maybe 10 years ago, a long time ago. So the biggest antique market in the world, or antique fair in the world, happens twice a year in Parma, Italy. And if you're looking for antiques, that's something that you may want to seek out. They're one of my favorite things that I've bought over the years, and I've moved them around a lot. The next thing that I'll talk about in this room is one of my most prized possessions. This is this is Queen Elizabeth, and it is a Hunt Sloanum. So Hunt Sloanum is a very much sought after and renowned Louisiana. We could probably say he's New Orleans based, although he lives outside of New Orleans, I think on an old plantation, but I'm not sure. Anyway, he is most well known for his butterflies, finches, and for this hatching that he does on his paintings. And then he always puts them in these antique frames. And I love this painting for so many reasons. I went to a reception at Martine Chasson Gallery. And if you don't know Martine, check her out. She is lovely personally and professionally. I just had to have it as soon as I saw it. So I didn't even ask the price, which was a little regrettable, but I had to have it. It came home with me that evening, and Guy wasn't even that angry with me, so win-win. I love that it's hot pink, and I love that the subject matter is Queen Elizabeth and that it's unexpected. And I think it has a little bit more value because of that. Another piece of art I could show you is because we have one of our Beagle busy, we had another one commissioned from Jason Horton of our lab Birdie over here. And she goes well in this room because of the backdrop, the coloring of the painting. It kind of picks up on the blue of the half canopy. This last piece of art that I will tell you about is the first piece of art that Guy and I purchased together as a couple. And this is, I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Lebec, and there's a gallery that I also cannot remember the name of on Royal Street in New Orleans. And he is from Normandy, and he's known for creating these seascapes, but they usually are like blood red or bright yellow, and we wanted something more subdued. So we went with a very small, very pretty painting of his, and Guy is a 50-ton captain and a huge sailor, so we had to do something with that subject matter. Over the past 2 years, we did an addition by enclosing the porch on this side, and when we did that, it opened up our primary closet to become something very special to me. It is multifunctional. It is my linen closet, but it also has a mini fridge, a snack bar and mini bar, and then like backstock organized all of my sort of toiletry products that I might need. And then this tower was added for storage for my luggage and linens and all of that. But it's got this beautiful Schumacher striped wallpaper. And then I've got 3 hampers down here. So one's for cleaning, lights and darks. And then right here is my little mini bar. I've also got one of those Smeg hot water heater things to make tea in the middle of the afternoon. And I may have gone a little overboard with the candy, but I enjoy it. So that's that space. Now I'm going to take you into what became our closet and my dressing area. So downstairs I showed you where we enclosed a porch. And again, we're working with very small spaces because this is New Orleans. We didn't want to take on like changing the roof line and all of that. So we just enclosed this porch off of our primary bedroom, and it became my dressing room and a closet. So I sit here to dry my hair and put on my makeup every day. And then these cabinets that we had custom built out outfit all of our clothes. For visual interest, I added these silk and grass cloth panels from Philip Jeffries that are actually chinoiserie. I chose them because they had a little bit of metallic in them, and then I'm also a big fan of chinoiserie, which you'll see a little later in the tour. I love anything with birds or butterflies on it, but it had the right coloring to sort of pull the blue in from the canopy and the accents from my bedroom. I'm always looking for things or bringing things from the past into my life, so I had some leftover beautiful, I think this is a Schumacher silk damask fabric that has like a gingham check underneath. And I found this old valet that's really meant for a man, and had my upholsterer make this feminine valet stand for me that usually has my ruffle robe that I use to get dressed with in the morning. Just a fun little tidbit. You know, I think the most popular room, according to the internet, is my husband's study, which we'll visit in a little while when we walk through the home. But and that's because it's color washed in like a dark Pharaoh and Ball, very popular color apparently. For me, I love the double parlor because it gave me the opportunity to use try out different layouts and create different little conversational areas and create a space that has a truly multi-purpose use. I'm not gonna give you the best answer on this because I also absolutely love my new home office that I made I designed it probably a year ago. Beautiful Graci wallpaper, and it's just, I was allowed to be ultra feminine in that space because I was only accommodating myself. I think if I had to pick one tip that I use the most, other than just being very aware of scale, I think scale and proportion is so important. Like visual reasoning is very important in interior design, and to me it's very intuitive. But I would say the one rule that you really could take from me is that I always put something dark in a space. So like I tend to use a lot of whites, creams, neutrals, punctuated by accents of color. Like for example, like abstract original art that has color in it, or pillows that have color in it, or maybe an accent upholstery piece. But I always try to anchor a space by using, number one, an antique, and number two, maybe it's a burl wood piece. Maybe it's a Louis XVI chest that has just a beautiful patina on it. Maybe it's, you know, like what's next to me is a beautiful Art Deco Gueridon. I've got another little marquetry Gueridon, Italian Gueridon on the other side. And I think it's important to use tension and contrast in design. And so if I could give you one piece of advice, it would be to use something dark when you're using a lot of light. In our primary suite is, and we have not renovated our bathroom since we moved in. What I did do upstairs everywhere was I had a millwork shop create all new doors, and then I put pretty hardware. We talked about surface bolts earlier, but a way you can dress up your space is to put pretty hardware on it. But inside here, I just want to show you, I did really pretty silk drapery, a Murano-inspired light fixture that was designed by Paloma Contreras, a contemporary and friend of mine. And then this is another New Orleans artist, Alexis Walter, and I absolutely love her. And this piece she actually gave me, she gifted it to me when I moved into my first house, which wasn't. This was the house right before this, but I will always cherish this piece. Alexis is a very talented artist as well as one of the nicest people I've ever met. So I think about that every time I look at it. And then I also enjoy taking baths in this luxurious freestanding bathtub. Now I'm going to take you into our guest bedroom. So we're now in our guest bedroom, and the first question I always get about this room is, what is the paint color? And I use the color washing technique again. So again, using the same color, but I didn't vary the sheen. So this is all high gloss, Benjamin Moore. The color is called Tissue Pink. And I selected this color for several reasons. Number one, I love to go uber feminine in a space sometimes, and I think that a guest bedroom is the right application for that, or can be the right application for that. And I wanted to choose a light, soft pink that wasn't too bubblegum and it wasn't too bright. And tissue pink also is a very flattering color for your skin. So a little tidbit from history is, you know, before they had electricity or used maybe a lot of makeup or something, like they would use paint colors that made you look younger or were flattering to your skin. So a hue like this would have been popular a couple hundred years ago, but that's not really why I chose it. I chose it because it's pretty. The bed has a half canopy over it in this pretty ivory silk. And then again, I had my upholsterer make this bed. So it's custom made in New Orleans. And I had the headboard made higher than usual. Usually a headboard's about 65 inches high, or sometimes a little bit higher, but this one's, you know, 80 something. But I wanted you to be able to see the beautiful silk Schumacher velvet that I used. The linens are actually Leontine linens that I had custom made for my Kips Bay show house. So, and again, I'm always changing out my linens in my house, but I thought this was a great space for me to repurpose the linens that I used for my Kips Bay room. Oh, I love these drapes in here. They have this beautiful Samuel & Sons trim on the leading edge that really brings out the coloring of the room. And then these nightstands behind me are Italian antique neoclassical style nightstands. And then behind that, I just did 2 panels of de Gournay Badminton, which is one of my favorite chinoiserie wallpapers. Now I'm going to take you into my office. Welcome to my home office. So this is the final room I'm going to show you today. And this is one of my favorite spaces in the house, and I recently completed it. I used to have a big commercial building where I ran my company out of on Magazine Street, but I sold it last year and decided to create a studio in my backyard, and then I used this office. So the walls are covered in a metallic Graci wallpaper, which is one of my absolute favorites and I really think sets the stage. And then I used a really plush stark carpet and I made it larger than you probably would normally do it, and only did like a 2 or 3 inch reveal of the wood all the way around. And then another one of my favorite things about this room, other than just the plain silk drapery, are the antiques that are in this space. This is part of a set of fauteuils that I found at the Marshall Puce a few years ago when I was visiting Paris with my mother. And then this is a Louis XVI daybed. So this room can double as another space for a guest, as well as a space for me to relax after I finish working and watch a little TV or something. This is my desk, which I had covered in a high gloss Farrow and Ball color called drop cloth, which brings out like the neutral tones that are in the paper. And then I have a very contemporary task chair. And then behind that, I loved pairing the traditional light Graci wallpaper with the moody, sort of more modern piece of art above it. So this is an Adrian Broom photograph, again from Martin Chasson Gallery. I don't know the name of it exactly, but I do know that it is it's a photograph of a famous English estate where she was staying in residence for a few months, and then the point of the painting was to catch the light just right. It's a little spooky when you really look at it. So that's one of my favorite pieces of art that I have. There are 2 more pieces I'd like to discuss while we're in this room. This is my favorite mirror that I own. This is a larger Venetian mirror, and I love a Venetian. And then this chest. So this chest was in my entryway for a long time, but I decided to move it up here because I wanted to be able to look at it every day. It is a Louis XVI directoire style fluted leg, a 2-drawer commode with this special carving here. So that's, you can see it's a bow. And then I love the hardware. I don't think this is the original hardware or the original escutcheons, but I bought it largely because of the hardware, and it just has a simple marble top. Home to me is an extension of my personality, and you know, it probably has more meaning to me in an aesthetic way than most people because it's what I do for a living, and I'm just naturally drawn to beauty and creating beauty, and that's important to me as a person. But I have found in my practice of interior design over the time that I've done it, the years that I've done it, that creating a space that's truly a sanctuary for you, that allows you to have respite and to feel calm and to feel self-possessed is so important to functioning, especially for people, you know, maybe you have little kids, or maybe you have a high-stress job, or maybe, you know, the wife is taking care of the little kids and the husband has a high-stress job, or maybe they both do, or maybe it's inverted, whatever it is. You want to be able to retreat after a long day. And I think that aesthetics and the way that your home is laid out and the functionality of that, both the practical aspect of actually being able to live in your space, as well as the aesthetic value, are just so important. And in addition to that, what home means to me is really a true sense of place. I am a deep South Southerner at the heart, and from Mississippi, and I always want to have collections of things, things that I've accumulated over time, pieces that mean something to me, something a piece of fine art that I picked up when I was traveling. You know, next to me on my side table is a book that my father gave me, a first edition of a book that a relative of mine won or was nominated for a Pulitzer for. So like just little things that you collect over time that mean something to you can really lend richness and layering to your home and make it feel like yours. And if you choose to hire an interior designer to help you do that, maybe you're not so, maybe you have a full-time job that demands so much of you that you can't do this for yourself, or you just don't have the interior vocabulary in order to execute a space well, and you need to hire an interior designer. Well, I think it's important for the interior designer to always consider and get to know the person whose home that it is and the way that they use the space, and really be attuned to that. And I always tell clients that it takes time. It takes time to create a space that really feels like your own. My home changes all the time. I move things around. I accumulate new things. Just don't be impatient. It's great to get the basics down, you know, get upholstery, rugs, drapery, a bed, nightstands, whatever. But the hardest part about really making a space feel like home is the layering that takes place. And you can do that with collections. You can do that with plants. You can do that with fine art.
Hello, Homeworthy. I'm Tara. Welcome to my home in New Orleans.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name's Tara Shaw. I'm from New Orleans. I want to welcome you to my home. I'm a designer, importer, and author. I first saw this home when I moved to New Orleans in the late 90s, and it was under construction then. It took about 3.5 years for the owner to build it. It's a Haussmannian style home. The fellow that had it built was a Francophile. He had seen the home when he was in France. He hired an architect, Barry Fox, to design the home. It was steel frame construction, all hand-laid stucco. So it was the most amazing process. I would walk by this home and watch the transformation over 3.5 years. And they put that beautiful slate roof on top with the mansard roof. And it was just love at first sight for me. And I kept thinking, I would love to build a house like this. Well, it went on the market in 2004. And my realtor invited me. It was more than I wanted to really spend on a home. And she said, why don't you just come look at it? And when I came, it was just like a beehive of realtors all working their phones. And I thought, well, you know, I'll never get this home because it's really out of my budget. But the house did not sell. And I drove back around. I saw it was still for sale. I called my realtor and they said, would you please submit an offer, which I did. So I bought the house in 2004 as a single woman. I was so excited. The house hadn't completely been finished, so I started working on bathrooms, just, you know, how do you eat the elephant? Well, it was really one bite at a time. But because I'm an importer, I had so much furniture. So I easily filled this home, and it has been my test kitchen this whole time. Like, I'll test out things I would never test in a client's home here. So it's been a wonderful ride. And I got to create a sanctuary here that I just love pulling into. Okay, welcome to the living room. You know, my husband and I and our whippets spend the majority of our time in this room when we're downstairs. Now, this portion of the living room is anchored with this beautiful custom molding in this alcove that has 3 French doors. What I love about them is you can just open these and walk out to the pool or keep them open. And you can hear the fountains in the background that are so soothing. The anchor in this room is this fabulous table. I bought this in Le Mans, France at a déballage. It looked nothing like this, but it is filled with wormholes, which actually helped me date a piece of furniture. So I know this is from the 18th to 19th century. It's got a bronze jardiniere on top that will keep filled with fresh flowers. The sconces are empire. I just love anything with a face or a hoof or a paw. Now the art, to balance this out, you're going to need big contemporary art for me to really work in a space. And I have a pair of these David Corinos. You know, it's a fascinating history on his art. They all tell stories. Actually, he would get letters from Helen Keller and all these famous authors, and he would then do a contemporary imprint of this for a large scale painting. So I anchored the room with 2 of these. You know, I bought this piano. It was one of the first things I ever purchased. And I am still on page 16 of Alfred Dunner's book 1. Can you believe that? But still, I love looking at it. It's a piece of art for me. In the corner, we have a mid-century Swedish chaise from Arne Norell, one of my favorite designers, and a clock from England that is sexy and heavily carved. The banquette in the second half of our living room is 18th century Swedish. This is the original patina. You know, I refer to Swedish furniture as the classic white shirt. Timeless, elegant, mixes well with other periods and styles, covered in a mohair, 4 Toonie pillows. As you come this way, for Century, I did a Belgian sofa. This is the essential key to comfort in this room because it just surrounds you with that down and foam cushion, and it's a perfect 2-person dog sofa. And just add whippets is my key to comfort. In the coffee table, this is Gaia Lenti, and she was one of my favorite architects, and then she got into furniture. So I'm proud to have one of her tables. She was a mid-century hero of mine. This is David Bourgeling. He is a New Orleans artist, and I like to use, locals' work if I can, whenever I can in design projects. I like to see these glass eyes that are on this 18th century Spanish mirror. But, you know, one of the things I like about antiques is they're not pristine. I didn't try and make it pristine. I want to live with the imperfections because basically that's what my life is filled with. And this is Sister's toy box. If you lift this, you are going to see years of toys in here. You know, one of the things that I will always have in my purse is probably a dog toy or a dog treat. And these are Italian processional batons. Now, this would be 17th century. They've got mirrors in that gilded finish, hand-carved gilded finish. Now, they would carry these before the king or before a pope. So I just like the history there, just leaning on the wall. Now, the chaise is French and comfortable. You know, when they were working on mid-century furniture, it was really all about the ergonomic form. So, love that. And this houses our television. So this is an 18th century Italian armoire that has been fitted for our TV. So, and for our Sonos, I should have French music playing in the background though. So I like it. I'll hide televisions and all sorts of stuff in an armoire. So super practical for me. So to keep neutrals interesting, I think that's where you layer in patterns. So whether it's the Fortuny print, and my texture and interest in the room is with different fabrics that you can actually read with your eyes. And of course, interesting art. So there's that balance. You have mohairs and plush faux furs, textural prints that would encompass African tribal feel. And I think that bouclés, which will never go out of style, and leathers add to that element of just luxury without having color. What I love about the home is it is very elegant and stately, but it is extremely casual once you enter into the front doors. And it is relaxed elegance. I lost the roof of the house during Hurricane Ida 2 years ago. And so basically, I thought I was finished with the home at that time. But what I did was I turned that lemon into lemonade, and I just redid so many of the rooms, just re-envisioned them. And my favorite room in the house is really the kitchen. There is 17th century Sicilian limestone floor that does not have two single floor tiles that are the same size. So basically it was like putting together a big jigsaw puzzle. I put in old beams from a barn that was in Texas into the ceiling, and it's got the rounded bottom. So, you know, the interesting thing about those long beams that are 26 feet long is the rounded part was really on the ground of the barn. So it's got this rough hewn feel mixed with contemporary cabinetry. Welcome to my favorite room in the house. This is the kitchen. So really, this was my jumping off point after Hurricane Ida. So I started with this 17th century Sicilian limestone floor. And there are no two pieces that are the same size. So this was a rather large puzzle for me. And then anchored it with this Italian range. And I feel that the knobs on it are like jewelry. And then I bought these slabs of marble that we could book match and just hide the hood, create this beautiful visual that looks like it starts from the bottom of the marble and continues up. Now the cabinets are not really black. They are a striated finish, meaning this was hand done by a person, and you can see all the gray undertones. And, you know, no two cabinets are really consistent. It was an organic process that really went back with the floor. But I wanted the gray in these to connect to the marble. In the kitchen, I have antique cutting boards from Italy. And then as you come this way, this is a soapstone. So this stone originally is like a medium gray. So we created, you had to get slabs really long enough to make this. So it's imperative if you're trying to do a kitchen, you don't want to piece together your slabs. But so we lined the sinks with the same stone and didn't really do a waterfall, had a break in the leg. And so this is where I hide like my Fisher Paykel dishwashers. I love washing, whether it's dishwashing, clothes washing, everything has multiples. When you come this way, you're going to see, I took out the cabinetry here and created with a company here in New Orleans, just this brass shelving. And so we did the same thing here, is we did marble on the bottom of the shelves as well as the top of the shelves, carried it all the way up to the wooden molding. And this is a collection that I started from Belgium. This is stoneware. So there are cake plates and tureens and pitchers. And then this is actually just organic plates that we use just every day that have an organic feel to them. This is by Be Home. So we continued the marble on this side of the kitchen and also lined the sink in the marble. So light is filtering in from a Conrad shade. I have a Swedish plinth pedestal there in marble. So the room feels extremely warm, especially when you are looking at the ceiling, because I added these beams that came from an old Texas barn, and they had this rough-hewn organic feel. So it feels collected and layered, even though it is a neutral. And I think the movement in the stones and the difference in the floor adds so much warmth. The fireplaces in the home are made out of limestone, very minimal burn logs, and The mirror over the fireplace is part of my century collection. We do that not only in the gold tone, we also do it in the silver. But you're going to see a cupboard where I house more stoneware because, as you can tell, not only am I an importer, I'm a collector. So this cabinet is from Belgium. This tureen is 18th century from Italy. This is old stoneware from the 16th century in this soft stone with angels on it. And we actually use these and use plates when we are entertaining. So nothing is really off limits. This is an 18th century Swedish table, and what I like about it is it has the original patina. We did nothing to it, so this would be the original blue-gray, and I like the way that this was so used that it's worn off, and you're going to see the iron V's that actually hold the table together. What I did to make the table feel current is we added these Plattner chairs, mid-century Plattners. You know, they're great for comfort. They're iconic. And the clock is 18th century Swedish. The painting is one of the first things I bought many, many years ago in the 90s. The antique dealer actually gave me a payment plan. So I wanted it and paid him like in 3 terms for this beautiful painting by Trulabert. So you can see the basket in the background, the fish, and then the provincial pottery. The chandeliers that are hanging in the kitchen above the island are mid-century Swedish. And what was so interesting about this artist is all the glass blowers at the time rejected him because he had bubbles in his glass. But, you know, he went on to become a Swedish icon. So I was excited to have, they're not really a pair, but they are a pair. So that's what I love about antiquity. Okay, we are in the formal dining room, and yes, we do use the formal dining room, but I just love scale, not only in contemporary art, but also when I can find it in antique art. This painting is from the 16th century. The Italian artist captured Esther, who is in the Old Testament, appearing before the king. And these are all her courtiers. And it's actually one of my favorite stories in the Bible. So I was extremely excited when I got to purchase this painting. So underneath it, we have a Swedish 18th century bench covered in a tobacco mohair. And then the bolsters are just a rough Swedish organic cloth that they would use as sackcloth. The buffet is where I house a ton of stuff. It is 1839, and you can see that they repainted it. And what I love is that the Nielsen's got it in 1965. So typically they would inherit this from their parents, and then they would repaint sometimes the interior and the exterior. I was fortunate that the Nielsen's did not repaint the exterior. So this is where I hide all sorts of things. So Christmas, I'm telling you, there's no telling what you'll find in here. It's like a treasure trove. Sometimes I don't know what's in there. So it's always good to just forage through there for vases. So this buffet decor anchors the space. You know, in a room, when I'm designing the room, I always work with height. I have staggered height, whether I need tall pieces to balance out the lower pieces. This is a Swedish bergère, but we use this table. My husband is number 8 of 10 children, and we use this big round table with all these chairs for not only dining, because when we hosted Christmas, we had 30 people, but someone will claim this table. Afterwards, we'll play a game called Left, Right, Center, which is a card game. It's absolutely hilarious. And a table this size, which is 72 inches of a mid-century table, is the perfect thing for rolling dice. But here we have one of my favorite chairs, Savonarola, another mid-century layered into the piece. This is David Lappin. He is was from Alabama. I don't quite know where he is now. We have it on an iron plinth. And then the anchor in this corner of the room is this beautiful limestone plaster mirror. We have it in the Century Furniture line. I just took these 2 lamps from my showroom, so basically I could be my best customer. And this is a mid-century, one-off piece that I found in the fields in Avignon, France, my last trip. It is all on top of Italian console that is from the 1700s that has beautiful water gilding. But so, I like the imperfection of it. So it's missing some leaves, but it's just what I want to come home to. As you collect, and because I work in Europe, I am constantly shipping in big 40-foot containers. So I will add pieces, European mid-century, or swap out an antique and put it in my showroom, which is 2 blocks away, to sell. So I would say the style of the home is European contemporary with heroes in every room. In other words, every room is anchored with an antique. We work around it with mid-century and add some casual contemporary seating, and that's the vibe of my tribe. So welcome to my office. This is like the hub of creativity. I re-envisioned this after I lost the roof. It was a red Pecky cypress, and this took many, many coats of bleach to take the red out of the floor and also my bookshelves. But I love the way it turned out. We use this Bona product that's gives it an organic finish, so it's a matte finish. I started collecting books when I was working in the fields in Europe in 1994. This was my first set I brought in, and I have been on a roll ever since then. What's the super anchor in this room are the prehistoric fragments. Now, my mother started that collection for me with these prehistoric scapula. I got those when I was a teenager, and they were like in a shoebox size. And I thought, oh my gosh, my mom got me shoes for my birthday, but it wasn't shoes. I opened the lid. It was prehistoric scapula. And I just looked at her, and I guess she could probably judge the disappointment because, I wanted shoes. And she said, one day that's going to be art for you. So I appreciate that. To this day, I remember that, because when I started seeing these collections in Europe, I started purchasing them. And then I buy these old vellum tombs. Most of these come from Italy, but some of these tombs are from 13th century, 14th century. At that time, they would use hides and skins to cover their books. I mean, that's before we went into these leathers. So I'm a collector of boxes as well, because I like to put things in boxes. I'm always looking for places to hide my stuff when people come over and video. But so I encourage clients to start a collection. I think that's one of the most fun things because I'll be traveling throughout Europe and I'll bring back several things for myself to add to my collections. And so you have this great memory of travels. Now this is a Swedish, it's called a tub sofa. And because it's the shape of a bathtub, the coffee table here is French brutalist. So you see that tension between that mid-century brutalist back with the soft form of the Swedish. And then, it's a working office. I've gotten, printers and all nonsense in here that we have to have just for really function. And these are superb man chairs. These are mid-century Italian, covered in a texture as well. Men get in it, don't want to leave. They kind of like the office too. I think this is one of the rooms that I probably get the most comments about is my office. They like the collection. They like the fact that I had painted the bottom of this cabinetry. I did what most people won't do. I love to take risks. So we bleached the top and I painted the bottom in satin. And as we come this way in my office, you're going to see my desk. It's French from the 1800s, really a working desk. And the secretary is from Lucca, Italy. So the sheep mid-century right here, if you can see him, I have a thing for sheep. So we are just part of this eclectic, but there's a lot of continuity here with the rest of the home because I redid all the floors in that organic Bona finish. And so it tied it all together because there's that thread of black. So I hope you like the office. I hope it inspires you in some way. Now we are leaving my office, transitioning into the entry of the home. It has limestone floors. The center diamond is in a Paradiso marble. Now, this chandelier that anchors the stairwell is 18th century Italian, has a loss of paint and gilding, and you see that rough iron. We did a French wire in there to electrify it. So I'm constantly bringing in chandeliers that are one-offs. I had one of my biggest chandelier finds this last trip. So I'm looking for things like this that are like one-of-a-kinds. These contemporary totems are from Evelyn Jordan. They're a New Orleans artist. What I like is the balance of the contemporary with the Italian Medici console, original conforming marble. It has the family crest on it. This is a Roman soldier from the 1400s. A French oval mirror. They didn't do many oval mirrors back then. The powder room downstairs houses a painting from Italy, 1503. I found it in Alba, Italy. I created this marble pedestal base for this stone sink that my husband and we bought a bunch of these basins when we were in Avignon. I did a little pressure washing. Contemporary sconces flanked by a bronze mirror, and the jewelry in the room is the mid-century Swedish chandelier. So I went to college to be a teacher, and I had a minor in psychology. I stood in front of a second grade student teaching class. I knew at that moment I was probably not called to teach children. I had a meeting with myself and I thought, what do I spend all my money on? It was fashion. So I pivoted and I followed my heart. I flew to New York. I went to the garment district. I started representing several lines. I opened a showroom in Dallas, Texas. Then I opened a second showroom. I had reps traveling for me. Really, the point in that career in the fashion industry was about the 5 to 7 year mark, where I started reading World of Interiors. Lisa Newsom had just started Veranda. So one of the lines that I represented was purchased by Liz Claiborne, which gave me the money to buy one nice piece of furniture a year. So I was trying to figure out who I was in furniture. I believe I always had that passion because, you know, as a child, I had a black faux fur bedspread with a mid-century leopard print banquette when I was 7 years old. I don't know where that came from, but obviously it was in my DNA. So I thought, well, I can buy one nice piece of furniture a year, you know, in this apparel industry, or I can start going to Europe and using my apparel model, which is selling wholesale. And I thought, well, why not do that? And then keep one piece, a container for myself. I thought that's the way I can really furnish my home. I saw Farrah Fawcett's home and she had like this 17th century Italian secretary with a side Twombly over it. And at that point, I was absolutely smitten. So I headed off to Europe and I shipped into my first container, and we shipped it into a mini storage on Tchoupitoulas, which is the street that runs along the river here in New Orleans. And it was all word of mouth at that time. And I rolled up the 10 by 30 roll-up doors, and everything sold in about 10 minutes. And I thought, you know what, I really might be onto something here with furniture importing. So I never looked back at that moment. I started importing, and then that door literally opened the door for me to design. Follow me upstairs and I'm going to show you the primary bedroom. Welcome to our bedroom. So really this is a bedroom for three. My husband Robert Walsh and our whippet sister Luca. She sleeps right in the middle of us, in between those two pillows. So this is one of the beds that I make in my furniture line, Terre Maison. It is just a two-tone contemporary bed, but it is the balance, the juxtaposition to the 18th century Swedish bench that's at the foot of the bed. This is covered in a beautiful cravat couture mohair. We have a 19th century French chest. Love this hardware. And this is the original bronze. The lamps are Swedish mid-century. This painting I bought when I was in Parma, Italy, the last time I was there. And it's just serenity for me. Love climbing those stairs at the end of a long day. And if you look this way, this is another local artist, Rain Bledsoe. And this has, I had her add this crystal. This is chandelier crystal from chandeliers that we had excess crystal over all the years. So there's some connectivity to the business there with this boat that is suspended really from fishing wire. As we come to this portion of the room, you know, we do watch television to go to sleep at night, and it's hidden behind this fabulous Empire armoire. This is one of the first pieces I bought when I was in Europe. We have mid-century brutalist lamps in here. The balance are these beautiful Swedish mid-century chairs. This is Spanish, a Spanish marble coffee table. And then the daybed is Swedish from the 1700s. I'm always collecting small objects when I'm in the field. I bought this iron crown in Parma, Italy. And this is just a rare French apothecary that they would literally put medicines in way back when. My husband and I got married in 2017. Remember, I bought this house in 2004. And I think the reason we've had a successful marriage is because I have my bathroom and dressing room, and he has his bathroom and dressing room. He had been a bachelor of 46 years, so I'm sure you can just envision what that looks like. But this is the space where I come in, I close the door. Now the paneling I added, these 3 panels came from a shipment. I bought them in the south of France. I didn't have enough paneling, so we added pine in here because this was the original material of this panel, and then did French molding. So when I bought this house, this was a giant jacuzzi in here. So I took that out. We created an alcove here, and with this incredible 18th century paneling, and it totally transformed the room. There's a soaking tub, a hatbox toilet, so it won't hide the beautiful panels. Now, if you look this way, this is an 18th century console that was created to be my vanity. We drilled through the marble, added a marble mortar bolt, drilled through that, contemporary plumbing, 18th century mirror, contemporary sconces, and so this is my get away from it all Calgon moment. Now what I did here was I added plaster on the shower. So all of our showers are super minimal. So this is all hand plastered, and it has a continuity of the herringbone floor in marble. This is a Thassos, hone Thassos, that runs straight into the shower. But one of the things I like to do is have connectivity in rooms. So in a lot of the bathrooms, you're going to see herringbone stone. You know, I have certainly run out of inspiration and gas, and I'm like this, I have nothing to give right at this moment. What am I going to do? I get a lot of my ideas in my sleep. I was working on a project for Emerald and Alden Lagasse. I'd worked on 3 homes with them, and literally the answer to this bathroom dilemma that we had was I got it in my sleep. So I think just going away and downtime, a lot of my inspiration though comes from Europe, because I will be there 3 to 5 weeks at a time. I'll be traveling through 3 countries, and I'm basically taking things that were so inspiring to me and then filtering them through my American design aesthetic. This is one of our guest bedrooms, and I am a big fan of a canopy bed. I call it Instant Safe Haven. This Venetian canopy bed I created for Century Furniture. So it just launched in their line this fall. And it has a beautiful Venetian movement on the headboards. And this is in heavy Belgian linen. The table is Italian, minimal, directoire. Now, I like Graci, so I'm always searching for it. Now, this is a very unusual one because it's instead of the brown, which they call brunite, this is a dark Graci. It has all hand-painted frame around it in a geometric pattern. Now, this cute little secretary on stand is Italian, lots of hidden drawers, and just a one-of-a-kind find. You know, the thing that makes you smile every time you look at it. In the corner of the guest bedroom is Eames Chase. So it is the perfect balance to that Italian 18th century secretary. This is a Swedish mirror with the original glass, and that is King Gustav carved in the center of the mirror. And basically, King Gustav revolutionized the furniture industry in Sweden because Sweden was importing furniture during his reign. He put a stop to that, and he created all of the small craftsmen to start making Sweden's own furniture. So we have him to thank for that. The armoire, which is French and 18th century, houses a television, of course. And this is another favorite for me, Arne Norell in a Swedish mid-century chair. So wanted to give a guest something super comfortable to relax in during their stay. Something unexpected too is always the best thing for a guest bedroom. So take a tour with me in the back garden. One of the things about this property is that it was a triple lot. So I knew I could build a lap pool. This is a saltwater lap pool. Added the fountains because I wanted to be in the middle of the city. I'm in a walking distance to restaurants and Whole Foods and the park, but yet you would never know it because once you come into this back garden, it's like you are in total privacy. The table is a Belgian bluestone, base is mid-century. The pots are from the south of France. They're from a town called Biot. And we have fruit trees, we have kumquat trees. And then in this area, I have orange trees and satsuma trees. But what I did was I anchored the garden with my favorite things, like on the coping of the pool, I added a pair of Sphinx. Now, you know, Napoleon was crazy about Egypt, and so that particular form came from the Napoleonic reign. We had this woman that I found in Bordeaux. She is amazing. She's in a sandstone from the 1700s. And if you just look this way, we are planted with about 17 or 18 Savannah hollies. I just put those in after the last hurricane, but I'd love to show you a seating area. So this is the reading and relaxing area under the umbrella. So the table is from the Renaissance. Stone from the Renaissance, and then these are also little capitals from the Renaissance. So I believe antiques are made to be lived with, loved, and don't you think they really complement the contemporary, comfortable furnishings? I think they add this layer of warmth and sophistication. Just exactly what I need on a Saturday. I think the key to soul is for it to be a reflection of you or a client. I think their collected travels, the things that are important to them, it's the soul of the home. So your home is not like anyone else's home. It reflects you. Home, for me, is the place where I unwind, I feel comfortable, I let all the cares of the day or my work life, I leave them behind. I close the door. I press the clicker on the garage, and you know, it's just this comforting feel where you don't have all these distractions. What I love about working in neutrals is it gives me this calm feel, and that's what I'm looking for in a home. Homeworthy, that was so much fun. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the tour with me. But I have a flight to catch, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.